Many talented people of colour were snubbed in major categories. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. The Hollywood foreign press are all very, very racist.
Ricky Gervais has spent 2 decades saying the things other comedians whisper about backstage. So why did the internet suddenly erupt with claims that he had broken his silence on Ellen DeGeneres and solved the mystery surrounding Wendy Williams? The truth, as it often is with viral headlines, sits somewhere between exaggeration and genuine public record. There was no secret confession, no leaked phone call, no dramatic press conference. What actually exists is a trail of publicly documented events, interviews, and cultural moments that, when pieced together, explain why these 3 names keep colliding in search results. To understand what is real, we have to separate performance from fact, and outrage from evidence. Ricky Gervais built his reputation on discomfort. From The Office to his string of Golden Globes hosting gigs, he positioned himself as the one person in the room willing to say what audiences suspected but television executives preferred left unspoken. His 2020 Golden Globes monologue remains one of the most replayed award show moments in modern memory. Standing before a room full of Hollywood's most powerful figures, he told them plainly that they knew nothing about the real world, that most of them had worked with Harvey Weinstein, and that they should just accept their award, thank their agent and God, and leave. It was blunt, it was uncomfortable, and it was entirely public record, broadcast live and archived permanently online. That single monologue cemented Gervais as a cultural figure who thrives on exposing hypocrisy rather than participating in it. It is that reputation, more than any specific news statement, that fuels headlines linking him to controversies he never directly addressed. Search engines and content creators often borrow his name because his brand is built on public reckoning, and that makes any Hollywood scandal feel like fertile ground for a Gervais-adjacent narrative. But it is important to be precise here. There is no verified public record of Ricky Gervais issuing a direct statement specifically addressing Ellen DeGeneres' talk show controversy or Wendy Williams' health situation. What does exist is a pattern of commentary from Gervais over the years about celebrity culture, cancel culture, and the entertainment industry's tendency to build people up before tearing them down. That broader commentary is real, well-documented, and worth examining, because it helps explain why audiences are primed to believe he would weigh in on cases exactly like these 2. To understand the Ellen DeGeneres story properly, we need to rewind to the summer of 2020. For 17 seasons, The Ellen DeGeneres Show had branded itself around a single phrase repeated at the close of nearly every episode: be kind to one another. That phrase became inseparable from her public identity, a soft, reassuring signature that made her one of daytime television's most trusted faces. Then, in July of 2020, BuzzFeed News published a series of reports citing former employees who alleged a workplace culture that contradicted that very message, describing an environment marked by intimidation, unequal treatment, and a fear-based hierarchy among senior producers. Variety followed with its own reporting, and WarnerMedia, the studio behind the show, launched an internal investigation. 3 top producers were later dismissed as a result of that inquiry. DeGeneres herself addressed the allegations in a letter to staff and later on air, apologizing and acknowledging that the show had grown too large for her to have oversight over every interaction, while also saying she was not aware of the specific behavior being described. The show continued for 2 more seasons before DeGeneres announced its ending in 2021, citing the toll of tabloid scrutiny alongside natural creative closure after 19 years, according to her own on-air statements. Ratings had also declined in the aftermath of the controversy, a fact confirmed by Nielsen data reported widely at the time. What makes this story endure in public memory is not simply the allegations themselves, but the gap between image and internal reality that they exposed, a gap that resonates with exactly the kind of institutional hypocrisy Gervais has built his comedic career around mocking. That thematic overlap, rather than any direct feud, is likely why algorithms and content creators pair his name with hers so frequently. Wendy Williams' story follows a very different trajectory, rooted not in workplace culture but in health, guardianship, and the public's long fascination with a woman who spent over a decade as one of television's most unfiltered voices. The Wendy Williams Show ran for 13 seasons, built on her willingness to gossip, speculate, and comment on other celebrities with a bluntness that made her simultaneously beloved and controversial. Health struggles became part of her public narrative long before her show ended, including her disclosure of a Graves' disease diagnosis in 2018 and periods of leave for what was described as complications related to that condition. The show ultimately ended in 2022 amid continued health concerns and the establishment of a financial guardianship, a legal arrangement confirmed through court filings and reported extensively by outlets including People and the New York Times. The most significant and factually confirmed update in her story arrived in February 2024, when representatives for Williams announced that she had been diagnosed with both aphasia and frontotemporal dementia, conditions that had reportedly been identified as early as 2023 following medical evaluation. This announcement coincided with the release of a Lifetime documentary titled Where's Wendy Williams?, which had begun filming before the diagnosis was finalized and which chronicled her guardianship dispute, her attempts to reclaim control over her own finances, and the visible decline that many viewers noticed but could not yet name. The documentary itself became a subject of controversy, with some critics and family members raising concerns about the ethics of filming someone during a period of vulnerability and before a formal diagnosis had been disclosed to the public. This is the mystery that headlines often reference, and it was never a mystery in the sense of hidden foul play. It was a slow, painful, and now medically documented decline that played out partially in public and partially behind a legal guardianship designed, according to court documentation, to protect her from financial exploitation. So where does Ricky Gervais actually fit into this picture? The honest answer is that his connection is thematic rather than direct. Gervais has spoken extensively, in interviews with outlets like The Hollywood Reporter and on platforms such as his own podcast appearances, about his discomfort with what he calls the performative kindness of modern celebrity culture, the idea that public figures curate an image of virtue that may not reflect how they treat people when cameras are off. He has never named DeGeneres specifically in these commentaries, based on available public records, but his broader philosophy, one built on skepticism toward manufactured niceness, aligns naturally with the public reaction to her shows. Downfall. Similarly, Gervais has spoken publicly about aging, mortality, and the entertainment industry's tendency to discard people once their usefulness fades, themes that resonate uncomfortably well with what happened to Williams as her health declined in full view of an audience that once celebrated her sharp tongue. This is where the responsibility of honest storytelling matters most. It would be easy and profitable in terms of clicks to frame this as Gervais directly attacking DeGeneres or offering exclusive insight into Williams's condition. But doing so would misrepresent the public record. What is true is that Gervais represents a cultural counterpoint, a comedian whose entire persona is built on refusing the kind of polished, protective narrative that both DeGeneres' show and, to some extent, the entertainment machine around Williams once relied upon. His silence, if it can be called that, was never really silence. It was consistency. He has been saying the same thing about Hollywood's contradictions since long before either of these stories became headlines, which is precisely why his name resurfaces every time a beloved public figure's private reality diverges sharply from their public brand. Royal and entertainment biographers have long noted this pattern in celebrity culture, where the public persona and private conduct diverge, sometimes for years, before a single triggering event forces reconciliation between the two. Investigative entertainment journalists such as those at Variety and The Hollywood Reporter have documented similar dynamics across numerous daytime and late-night programs, describing an industry-wide tendency toward image management that occasionally collapses under its own weight. DeGeneres' case and Williams's case, while entirely different in cause, both illustrate that broader truth. One was a story about workplace culture failing to match a branded message of kindness. The other was a story about physical and cognitive decline hidden, whether intentionally or through simple denial, behind the mask of a still-functioning television personality. Neither story required Gervais's commentary to be compelling, but his cultural presence as entertainment's designated truth-teller inevitably draws audiences to wonder what he might say, even when he hasn't said it at all. What ties these three names together, then, is not confrontation but reflection. Gervais represents